Welcome to the Sunday Superversive Livestream. I am your host, back from vacation. I'm feeling tanned, I'm feeling rested, and my name is still Benjamin Wheeler. Pay no attention to the man in the mask in my basement. And I'm joined with my usual co host, Anthony Marquetta. Uh, Anthony, how are you doing today?
I just like the idea that you're tanned from that famous British sun.
Absolutely. The weather was fantastic. The sun came out one day out of
That actually is
14.
fantastic for Britain.
It was. I was also in Scotland. It's
Oh, where the weather's even more famously excellent.
it
Okay.
actually was pretty good for the time of year. I'm not
There
joking.
you go. Well, yeah, that's you could thank climate change for that, and I'm not even kidding.
I will commit an honor killing on myself and then you. So the stream today, we're pretty relaxed. I actually just came in from a 10-hour odd series of. Well, I've been traveling for like 12 hours, so we're not doing anything complex. Next week we might have John C. Wright, but we'll see. We'll see. Uh, and let's see here. Anthony, you went to see the MHA movie.
Yeah, it's called You're Next. Uh, it was
That's
pretty good.
awfully
I liked it.
threatening for a MHA movie.
What, the title?
The title.
Oh, I guess it's a callback to a famous line when in the manga and the anime when All Might points to the camera and says,
Uh,
"Now it's your turn." Uh,
uh,
so
uh.
the villain was like imitating All Might. Uh, the weird thing about the movie is that like for a My Hero Academia movie, it was actually kind of convoluted, like weirdly so. Uh, like the plot. So first off, you like the fact that they keep pretending these movies are canon when they are so obviously not canon just has to die because I don't even know when this movie theoretically could have taken place. Like
Yes.
there is no there's no lineup of things where this movie of all of the things that need to happen for this movie to happen could have happened.
Right.
Like we gotta just stop pretending that this is canon. It's
Yeah.
a non-canon spin-off story, which is perfectly fine. Like I actually would prefer if they just admitted that. Uh, but in theory, it takes place at like some point where in between when Japan has gone like post-apocalypse and Deku has rejoined UA. Now, the reason I say there is literally no point where this could have happened is that there is a period where Japan has gone post-apocalypse and Deku is working, but he's not with UA. And then there is a period where Deku is with UA, but it's like a 2-day stretch just before the final battle. And in that 2-day stretch, they very specifically don't send Deku, like, they don't go out and fight because he's so important to the final battle.
Right.
So
And he's also been
there is no
fighting like
time.
nonstop for like how many when did the apocalypse start? Uh
Uh, it was sometime like society kind of starts to collapse after the war arc. Uh,
yeah. But
so
basically he was fighting the entire time.
Right, exactly. So there is no point where Deku was both with UA and patrolling in the apocalypse. So this movie just can't take place, as far as I can tell. Uh, right.
Yes.
So there's that. Also, Discord keeps pinging, and I want it to stop.
I keep hearing a little bit of static,
Yeah, I don't
but
know. Whatever. Okay. Anyway,
tell Discord to
so
quit it. Stop.
I know. Uh, uh, but with that said, once you accept that like conceit, okay, so there's like no time this could have taken place. Like it's not technically impossible. I guess they would have only needed like a 5-hour-ish stretch, of free time where Deku decided to patrol with the UA for it to happen, but it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Once you accept that though, right? It's actually a fun like setting to do this movie in Because first off, you get like the post-apocalyptic city overrun by villains, which is already pretty cool. You have Deku, who has now at this point like all but mastered the use of all of his quirks, right? So he's using
Yeah.
all of his quirks, which is cool. And you get the rest of Class 1A like joining him in the fight, right?
Yes.
So I can see why they wanted to do this. Uh, it makes
What
sense
is
to me.
pinging on your Discord? Because I'm starting to hear it now. Holy
I
cow!
keep, yeah,
Hit it.
it just like bunched up a bunch of pings.
Ugh.
I'm gonna like leave the server for a moment at least,
All right.
because it is so annoying. But yeah, it like bunched up a bunch of pings to like a pro-life server, I believe. And I will say that publicly. I'm on a pro-life server.
Good man.
Uh, yeah. With that said, it's being real annoying.
Listen.
So I'm about to leave a pro-life server, at least temporarily. Uh, if it'll let me. Go, Ben. Entertain people. Notification settings. Nothing. Done.
Anyway.
Did it work?
Good work.
It might have worked. Okay. Okay,
Good
cool.
work.
So it's, yeah, because I just saw a message pop up and I didn't get a notification. So I'm still in, but it's muted.
Baby.
All right. Anyway. Yeah, back to the movie. So, like, the plot of the movie is weirdly convoluted. Like, this villain apparently has seen that Japan has like collapsed into anarchy, so decides this is a good moment for him to rush in and like make himself, fill in the power vacuum, pretending to be All Might or something, or like as the new All Might. And you learn later in the movie that he's part of like a European crime family, like the mafia. It's implied Italian mafia, by the names. And he like his power is called alchemy, and it involves him like when he throws coins, he could transmute things. And the plot centers around there is a girl who he has kidnapped, who if you can like resonate with her quirk, she will supercharge your powers. But if you don't resonate with her quirk, then you just like are put in extreme pain, right?
Yeah.
So, he has kidnapped this girl and has used her to supercharge his alchemy powers. And for some reason, he creates like a gigantic, like alternate reality city thing that the Class 1A kids all get trapped in. It's like really weird and doesn't make much sense. I don't know how his alchemy powers allowed him to create like multiple biomes and a city that quickly, or how that works. I don't know.
He's being supercharged, Anthony. Don't think about it.
Yeah, it was supercharged. So, and they had a side character in there who was trying to kill the girl, and you learn that he was the girl with the supercharged power. And you learn that he was like hired as her servant because he has a quirk in where if he touches someone with his right hand, then he can neutralize their quirk. And apparently like her quirk also causes her extreme pain when she uses it. So he was like there to make sure that she was living a normal life.
Yeah.
So all of that is to say, like, so now that she's been kidnapped, he like had a promise. He's a dark, edgy character, right? They even make a joke about it at one point because
Yes.
Bakugo goes, "Hey, cool side character, get over here," which was pretty funny. So they even make a joke about it at one point that he's like kind of a cool, edgy character, because he made
Yes.
a promise to her that like if she ever went haywire, that he would kill her. And he like when they go and kidnap her, he's injured and he loses his right hand, so he's actually quirkless and is just using like an Akira bike and a cool cyborg arm
Amazing.
with a gun attached.
Amazing.
He does the Akira slide at one point. Obviously, he actually is a fun character. I got to admit,
Right.
like it's easy, but it's
Yeah.
fun.
Well,
Uh,
it's like there's edgy and then there's edgy. Uh, like how do I want to put it? Like Shadow the Hedgehog is ridiculously edgy, unacceptably edgy, basically. But
yeah,
the fun thing about him is that he doesn't blink. It's like he'll show up. He's like, I'm gonna have to kill all these people for no reason, and then of course he doesn't. But then
right.
it's like he still talks like that, unironically,
Yes.
without
Yeah, this guy whose name was I don't remember. I keep
Shade
wanting to call him
Master.
Yeah, I keep wanting to call him Guido, which is
Nope.
just an Italian American slur. Uh
Yes,
but and that's not his
because you
name.
were texting me during that movie, Anthony.
I was
Unacceptable.
I was sitting literally in the very back of the theater. There was a wall behind me. Nobody could see it. I want to make that very clear publicly now that I have a chance
I'm
to
ashamed.
to say this. There was no one behind me. Nobody could see my phone.
I'm
Anyway,
ashamed.
I'm gonna call this character Guido because it's funny. Uh, anyway, so Guido, he's like a little bit edgy, but he's actually like he's a pretty fun character. Like I liked him. The Akira bike was cool. It has some of the typical MHA tropes that you just kind of have to accept, like the fact that this villain that they're fighting is so fast he could keep up with Deku, who's like supercharged with 8 quirks and has super speed, but Guido is quirkless and like dodges punches on a couple of occasions. And then you're like, okay, sure, sure. Uh,
Oh.
but that's just kind of a convention of the genre at that point, right? Like you just sort of accept it. The reason the movie works insofar as it does is that the fight scenes in it are really fun. Like these are probably so the best MHA movie, I have contended this since I've seen it, is Heroes Rising, which is actually a great movie, one of the best superhero movies ever made. Once you view the movie as what it is, which is an alternate ending for the series, and not what it pretends to be, which is some sort of in canon thing where they're all moved to an island randomly for some reason,
Uh
uh,
huh.
and that yeah, which is dumb. But once you realize that's actually just an alternate ending, Heroes Rising is a fantastic movie. It's still the best movie. So this has definitely not surpassed it, but this is probably the second best movie. And one of the reasons it's so fun is that they get a lot of play. Like Deku, you could tell that they're very specifically making sure Deku has an opportunity to use all of his quirks, right?
Uh huh.
Like in battle, fast, he calls them out as he uses them in typical anime style, right? He, will go number 7, whatever, smoke screen or something, number 5. He goes, oh, the second's danger sense is activating, right? For the benefit of the people in the back.
You.
But it's very cool. They do it, he moves very fast. It effectively makes Deku seem like he's actually smart, right? Like
Yes.
he's
Which
thinking as
he
he's
needs
fighting,
it.
and he's right. And it's creative, which he's in. Like canonically, Deku is smart, right? But
Yes.
saying he's smart and going in canon, Deku is smart, but actually showing him being smart are two different things. Like watching this movie, I really got the impression Deku is actually like really good at in battle strategizing, right? Using his quirks in creative ways to overcome things. Like one of the most fun ways that they overcame a villain is that there was a villain whose quirk was that it slowed everything down inside of a force field. It didn't stop it. It just made it really slow. So in order to overcome this, Deku just uses Fajin, which is the ability he has that like supercharges his blasts, right? Like it stores energy and then explodes it. He uses it to supercharge himself so that he moves so quickly that even when he enters the slow zone, he's still moving at super speed, which
Yes.
is pretty funny. Uh, a pretty funny way of defeating that sort of quirk. So I enjoyed that. The ending was good. I liked it. It made sense and kind of fit. The quirkless guy with the neutralization quirk try to remember that the girl who supercharges quirks, most people who try and like, I don't know, merge with her or whatever, will just like be in extreme pain and it won't work. But every now and then somebody can like pair with her. He tries to pair with her and it supercharges his neutralization quirk so that it works even without his right arm, and it completely shuts down her quirk permanently, right? I think that makes enough sense to work as for the climax. I liked it.
Yeah.
Uh, and then they imply that there's a romance there, which is a little weird because even though both characters are over age, he met her when she was a little girl and he was an adult. But don't think about it. Uh, don't think about it, Ben.
I wasn't. I was thinking about nothing at all. Nothing,
Yeah.
nothing, nothing at all.
And then the movie, the movie ends. They defeat him. Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki get a lot of screen time. They team up together, like, on multiple occasions to fight, which is pretty fun. Uh,
Uh huh.
it's actually kind of interesting. Like, I noticed that in the fight scenes, Bakugo and Todoroki would sometimes be doing more than Deku. Like, the final fight scene, like, Deku was actually, like, knocked out for a good chunk of it while Bakugo and Todoroki are fighting. But they're always very careful to make sure that Deku
Uh
gets
huh.
the very last hit, right? Like,
I
he
mean,
gets the final hit. But like they're willing to let like Bakugo and Todoroki fight. All of the characters get moments. They have, they get to use their powers and do fun things. Overall, the plot, as convoluted as the plot is, and as little sense it makes in like the setting, I didn't really enjoy the movie. As far as MHA movie goes, it's one of the better ones. I actually like all of the MHA movies. I am a fan of the movie franchise. I know a lot of fans aren't because they like of what I was saying earlier. Like they try to pretend they're canon when they're
uh huh.
clearly not, right? Which I could see why that would annoy people. It doesn't really bother me though because I just like, oh yeah, no, this isn't canon. They could say what they want.
Yeah.
Uh, like they're just lying. It's clearly not canon. Uh, like there is no way that a faux All Might came in, nearly took over the city, built a giant like multi-environment biome in the sky, and then they defeated him in a space of 5 hours, and Deku just never bothered to mention it in the manga. Like you
Right.
would think that in when he was writing his account, this guy would come up, but nope, apparently not. Uh, but I liked it. Good movie. Recommended. If you have a chance to see it in theaters, I recommend you do. I suspect they will probably make one more movie. Uh, I hope they do. I will go see it when they make it. The formula for an MHA movie to be entertaining for me, as far as I'm concerned, like don't make anybody act out of character. Uh, give me fun fight scenes, and don't make the ending depressing. And you pretty much nailed an MHA movie, right? Like
Yeah.
that will do it for me. I will have a thoroughly fun time as long as you do all of that. All right, what did you have, Ben?
Yeah, I saw John Wick for the first time.
Did you really?
Yep.
What did you think of it?
It was really good. I see why it got popular. I am shocked
What a
that
hot take.
popular thing is popular. I thought I was the only
Mm.
arbiter of popular, but it turns out I'm not.
Well, it makes me think of like Game of Thrones is overrated garbage. Oh, have
Yes.
you ever seen it? Chad, no.
Chad, no. I read the first book and put away all the other ones.
The Game of Thrones overrated garbage, not worth watching. Oh, you've seen it? Chad, no. Of course not. But keep going.
Yes. So I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's not the movie that impressed me the most because that belongs to Bullet Train in my little journey. Uh,
Ooh.
Bullet Train was really good. But John Wick was also very good. So the thing with it is that probably one of the best things that John Wick does well is that it implies a very larger world and system than you ever see in one movie. even when he's jumping around from different organizations and different movies, he's still, how should we put it? There's still way more going on in the background that we ever see. And this movie is probably the best example. There's tons of hints all over the place that John Wick is more than who he says he is. And not just in the sense of like everyone's scared when they stole his car and killed his dog, but in more the sense of like when he breaks open the concrete underneath the fake house he has, and he reveals that even though we don't understand what the coins are yet, he reveals that he has absolute scads of the gold coins that represent favors between individuals working the system. There's an interesting bit that Owen Benjamin pointed out that I never really thought of, but that essentially, he also talked a lot about how it represents the banking system, which is a little bit in there. I think I don't think it really represents that uh, purposefully. I think it's more of an accident. But yeah, no, it's interesting. Uh, but it represents favors in between factions of the high table and its members, and they don't interact with non-members. And people who are aware of it tend to know to look away when these things happen, because one, the people playing these dangerous games will clean up their own messes, and two, it's a great way for them to get killed. Uh, so it's just interesting. Like there's a lot more going on, what people would call world building, going on, good world building, I should say, going on than people expect. There's a reason why John Wick is considered a great movie, and a lot of it isn't just the action scenes, which were 10 out of 10, very
Hmm.
interesting, never forgettable. Um, but also because there's also that desperate feel about his wife and his dog and all this other things that makes it very poetic. The theory that he's dead is just Tumblr trash, etc., etc. Uh, yeah, no, it was worth the seeing, and I'm quite frankly I'm gonna go check out the other ones to see it to see them. I have seen some clips already, but you know, see the whole thing at once is different. I consider it interesting for several purposes. One of the things that has been very interesting to me and something that I've been researching for myself and the things that I'm doing with my life is patronage. How? How do we get patronage within our networks of authors and writers and artists of different kind? Especially in a, quite frankly, extremely hostile art sphere. Incredibly hostile art sphere. In fact, I could say that there are no allies of size. And of course, I mean big four publishing, or even, quite frankly, depending on how Bain Books is, you know, sometimes they're showing signs that they're a captured entity. Sometimes. So it's like if we have nothing even Bain sized, that can really help us out and buy our books, provide living for authors and publishers. Like a good example would be John C. Wright. He's an independent writer. He sometimes get published with Tuscany Bay. Sounds impressive, but Tuscany Bay is just a dude. One dude, Richard Palinelli. And I'm sure he has people working with him and editors, but his system, from what I understand, is based on a cut of the profits, not a system that gives you an advance. Because even though advances are kind of bad because it lowers your profits or the money you get from profits, it also gave you a year's worth of wages so you could work on the next book. And that's something I think people really underestimate. Yeah, sure. Certain authors got screwed out of their money. Half of them, though, got screwed out of money by their agents, and the other half got screwed over because they didn't have the good sense to renegotiate the contracts. At least that's the ones I've seen. There's some cases, mostly involving Disney, where Disney is the one screwing them over, especially in case of one author who they were trying to hope he was, and I'm not joking, die of cancer so they didn't have to pay him his proper dividends. Um, Scumbag behavior. Holy cow. But you see that if I was given a wad of cash, hey Ben, here's 50,000, here's 75,000, go and write another book and sell it to us first. That would be a different experience. That would be a different life experience than, oh man, I got to get profits out of this book. I got to have my email marketing on point. I got to have a Kickstarter. I got to have marketing, publishing. I got to set up live streams. I got to set up cover artists. I got to set up editors. I got to make sure that my formatting is on point. I got to make sure that, and it's all done by one person, the author, who, quite frankly, shouldn't really be in production. They're not a sculptor. All right, they're not a sculptor. They're not a painter, right? Andy Warhol had the benefit of two major things. One, he was a marketing genius. Two, he had an actual patron who didn't give a shit what he was doing, but they liked what he was doing. And so they'd give him like $50,000 for multicolored Marilyn Monroes. And because of how he marketed it, they became very famous. But the thing is, that was actually relatively simple, and he devised simple ways to do it, and could repeat it many, many times in the factory, like it was all a factory as well as a funny name, and he got a lot of sales out of it, to the point where all he had to do was sell portraiture to rich people, and make $20,000 a pop in 1970s money. So it's like when people look at this stuff, like these patronage networks, it is absolutely necessary, not because rich idiots with no day job paying pet artists. I mean, it could be that, it doesn't have to be that, but because it gives artists freedom to work on things that they might not have the ability to. And one of the things that John Wick shows is that a patronage network actually has a ton of power to create changes and structures within a ultimately chaotic system like crime syndicates, to the point where the rules actually spread out from the syndicates and stuff like that to normal existence, keeping actually normal people safe. And sure, criminals, hurt people all the time. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking like there's ideas that are worth experiencing, and to sort of like see how they can be applied. If you're a rich guy and you're like, I kind of wish I had a pet artist, picking up an artist like John C. Wright or me or Anthony or whoever and saying, hey, here's $50,000, a paltry sum, not what you're worth, or even more than you're worth. I want you to write this, this, and this. You can do that. Most authors are willing to do that. But the thing is, most people don't understand or value the right kinds of art. They don't see, how do I want to put it? Like if you go to an art studio, half the stuff you'll see will be degenerate and the other half will be meaningless. It's not like the art shows of different years. And some of them are very impressive, very interesting. But quite frankly, most of the ones I've seen in St. Louis have not been, like I don't blame rich people for not, in St. Louis for not funding art outside of, appropriate channels that require decent amount of investment. Now, keep in mind, I'm only working off of the surface level. Maybe there's a deeper layer I'm just not seeing. But I haven't found it yet, at least in my city. And it's in John Wick. These patronage networks all over the place. What I understand from the next movies is that different patronage networks are fighting with each other between the Continental or the Marquis or the different villains. You owe this favor. You gotta honor it. If you don't owe this favor, you're gonna lose access to the Continentals or to, society in general, or you'll become anathema and anyone can kill you and take your stuff. And it smooths it out. If John Wick didn't have the support network he received from the Continental, he could not be John Wick. He would have been dead a very long time ago. Uh, and it's interesting because it's underneath the surface, and it's never really discussed, but it is there. It is very important, and it's the key to various characters' success and interactions between them and their higher ups. Does that make sense, Anthony?
It does. My favorite. So I did watch John Wick. But I watched it on TV,
Mm,
like with other stuff on in the background. So I liked it, but I wasn't paying like super close attention to
yeah.
it. However, my favorite scene in John Wick is actually one of the last scenes in the movie.
Yeah, which one?
Uh, John is talking to, I don't remember the name of the characters. The guy who like is part of the Continental after he's killed the guy in the
Oh,
hotel.
yeah, yeah.
He's talking to him in like I think it's New York.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy tells him it's like you got 2 hours to escape. And John looks at him and goes, "What's to stop me from just killing you right now?" And then the guy puts up his hand and the entire city just stops and turns towards them. And like everybody freezes and just looks at John. And then he puts his hand down and everybody goes back to walking. And I remember watching that and going, all right, that was extremely cool.
It was
Uh,
extremely cool.
and it was also like, it's a great visual reminder of just how much up against it John is. Like
Yes.
the just how screwed he's about to be, right?
Yes.
And the second movie has a similar thing where it starts and John's running away and there's a homeless guy next to him like begging for change or something and John's ignoring him and then he's about to walk away and the guy grabs him and goes 1 hour and 50 I don't remember exactly but like in 52 minutes clock is ticking, Mr. Wick, and John like shoves him off and starts running. So you are correct, like in my opinion, as fun as the action scenes are, and they are very fun, to me, what makes the movie as good as it is this feeling of the world is way bigger than what you see,
Oh, yeah.
right? Which they show in a lot of different ways. Now, as people have pointed out, and correctly, it is quite absurd that it is a world where, like, an assassin society seems to be like the main form of organization. Like I think somebody pointed out, literally there is a single character in all four movies who is ever confirmed not to be part of the assassin society, and it's his wife. That's it. Like every other character in the movie either can be or is in the assassin society.
Yeah.
Now, does this make sense? I mean, no.
I mean,
But
there's also like people who know about the society and then are like like that police officer from the first movie who's like, how's it go? Noise complaint? And noise complaint. Like, you're working again, John? And then it's like, one of those things where he's not really an assassin. I don't think that's right to call him that, but he's certainly in the know.
right, like I would still say though that like the extent of it is pretty absurd,
Yeah.
but in a way like where it's part of a hyper stylization more than like an issue, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're just kind of going like, okay, so imagine alternate world where this was possible and you were in it, right?
Yes.
Like and then it kind of makes more sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also enjoyed when I enjoyed the scene when the father learns that he killed John Wick's dog and stole his car, and he like goes up to the son and like slaps him and goes like, "Are you an effing moron?" He's like, "What is wrong with you?" I laughed pretty hard at that when he was going like, the man the man whose dog you just killed, like, can literally murder everyone. You are so screwed, and you deserve it. He's like, I'm gonna protect you anyway, because you're my son, but holy shit, you dumbass. It's pretty funny.
Yes.
Um,
And like it was even better because like he gave him a little vodka just so it hurts a bit, and it's like, yeah,
yep.
all right.
Um, it was a pretty good scene. The only thing about the movie, like I've seen, like I think Jeffro complained about this. He didn't like that they had to kill John Wick's dog to motivate him. He's like, it feels a little silly, like, and
Eh,
he was comparing it to like think of like Solomon Kane. Like, why does Solomon Kane do it? Because he hates bad people, and that's it, right? Like, you don't really need to explain it further than that.
yes.
Solomon Kane doesn't have a dark backstory. He just doesn't like bad people. You know, uh, if
I
you're a
mean, it's
bad
true.
person, Solomon Kane doesn't like you. So John Wick, though, it's like, no, we got to explain why he's doing this. He needs
Well, it's
they
a
they, they
different
kill his
people.
puppy. It is.
You know,
I
like
get it.
because like here's the thing with what is it? Here's the thing with John Wick. Like the whole point was that he left, right? He was an assassin,
Yeah.
killed tons of people, and then he disappeared into the night after performing an impossible task that no one else could perform. In fact, he should not have been able to perform at all. And you know, like, and his reward was that he gets to live the rest of his life with his wife. That was the implication, you know.
Yep.
And it's like now that he doesn't get it, you know, it's kind of. I'm trying to think here. Um, you know, it's like why. Excuse me. I can't think of what I'm trying to say here. Now that he doesn't get it, it's like it was pointless. And what does he get to do nowadays? You know what I mean? It's like, well, no, he's going to choose revenge. He's going to choose to make those bastards pay. You know, and it's like, sure, like from our perspective, it's just petty revenge. But, you know, frankly, that's I mean, most people do that. Most people operate it and they understand it. Like the thing with Solomon Kane, and the reason why I like Solomon Kane's movie was like him finding his mojo back and becoming Solomon Kane, is because nobody really gets the Puritan mindset of what do you mean you're working evil? You know, that's unacceptable. You know, how dare you? But no, like it's very much 4, 3, 5, 6. It's very much like how do I want to put it? It's black and white. And like some people will say, you know, hey, you know, the world is black and white. Don't you know? And it's like, no, it's black and white. It's entirely black and white because it's either for God, good, beautiful, true, or against God, bad, evil, and lying, bad, ugly, and lying. Um, you know, like what are people supposed to get out of life? You know, some sort of moral lesson. The moral lesson is that you should have served God. The moral lesson is that Adam fucked it up for us, and now we
Yep.
have to live in sin and shame. But the thing is that Jesus Christ gave us the way out. You know, if you want the deep moral complicated things, you know, talk to an atheist, and I'm sure he has all kinds of complicated reasons why he's not a Christian. uh, uh, but and he I can't even say it with a straight face, Anthony. Uh,
Amazing.
you know, and I mean that about atheists having deep reasoning. But it's like that. Like, you know, looking at Solomon Kane is not he's not insane. Solomon Kane is not insane by any stretch of the imagination. But to the outside observer, and to the non-Christian observer especially, he is insane. You know, he doesn't think about it. He just
Right.
says, "Oh, you're doing this wickedness. Thou must repent." And if it's wicked enough, he'll kill them. You know, like, and mostly he interacts with people. He does it. Like I took a lot of inspiration for that for Jack Morrow. It's that, you know, these and Pinkerton's ghosts in general, these creatures are not, you know, pathetic little things who have to make strange and horrible choices just to survive. These are wicked people, wicked monsters, wicked elves, wicked whatever you want, who are making deliberate choices to torment sons of Adam and daughters of Eve. There can be, like in the season one opener, I had Silverjack Fascio make some jokes. It's like, oh, you know, Jack Morrow Merciful, are you a reverse werewolf? Why shouldn't I just eat these children? You know, it's
Yep.
like to like the fact is that the moral layer of the John Wick story is baked in. If these people had kept themselves nose to the grindstone, if the son of Tarragon or whatever his name is had just finished the Atlantic City job, whatever it was, and come back, you know, maybe even if they had stolen John Wick's car and hadn't killed the dog, quite frankly, everything would have been over. No, there would have been no problems whatsoever. Maybe, hey, you stole my car. Oh, it's John Wick. Here, sir, here's your car back. We're so sorry. We're so sorry. We didn't know it was you. I'll teach my son respect. It probably wouldn't have gone anywhere. But he killed his dog.
I'm not so sure. I disagree because the way everybody talks about it in the movie is that there is nothing that they could do. John is coming.
Yeah, but they killed the dog.
Like,
Like
yeah.
what
Oh,
I'm
you
saying.
mean okay?
Yeah.
You mean if they hadn't killed the dog?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Then I agree.
They
Yes.
deliberately made an act. They deliberately performed an act of cruelty without finishing the job of killing John Wick. If they had killed John Wick, of course it would have been over then. He was down on the floor. They had power over him. So it wasn't
Yeah.
evil. It was just being cruel. So that's what I'm saying. Like these,
I agree. Yes.
yeah. So it's like and I'm not saying, oh yeah, you have to be pragmatic evil. No, what I'm saying is that the moral lesson's already in there. These people are cruel and heartless. They thought he was a target, and they, treated him like a target. And so, when John Wick, recovered and came back out, he treated them like, they deserve to be treated, but he also did it from an understandable perspective, because I don't think if we came to a John Wick movie and it was like his past, right, when he was starting out, or something like that, it would be interesting. We'd watch it because it was a John Wick movie, but I don't think it would have the depth of him losing his dog and then going on a rampage of revenge, dead. You had another movie you saw, Anthony. Unless you have something else to say about John Wick.
No, the last thing I'll mention about John Wick is that, like, and this is tangentially related, but like the whole issue of backstory. I do get what you're saying. I agree with you, actually. I don't really have a problem. I'm just stating, like, a
Yeah,
criticism that I heard. But part of this came when, I had a lot of what they were saying because I do get the criticism, right? Like, I think it has some teeth to it in a
Mm,
broader sense, right? Not on John Wick, but like more broadly, we over backstory everything,
oh
right?
yeah.
Like backstory-itis. They do this really in a really big way in the Death Note movie. I had this in mind when I came up with Sean's backstory, right? Like,
Yeah.
so a backstory is itself, it's a thing that, like, if you have a fully fleshed out character, you should have a past in mind, right?
Yep.
Obviously. And obviously, their past should inform their present actions. However, it is very deliberate that in Sean's backstory, uh, he doesn't join the Pinkerton's ghost because of any specific reason. And what I mean by that is his parents weren't killed by a werewolf. The
Right.
Pinkertons, the Pinkertons themselves didn't even take them in. Essentially, the reason that Sean joins the Pinkertons is that old Tom sort of sees that as a way of instilling discipline in Sean, who is so completely at the end of his rope, he just kind of does what old Tom tells him to,
Yeah.
right? Like that. And the it didn't need to be the Pinkertons. It could have been any number of other organizations.
Yep.
Now that he is in the Pinkertons, Sean finds meaning in the work, right? And that's part of
Yes.
the point, that old Tom sees meaning in the work, which is why he has Sean doing it and training for it, right? Hey,
Yep.
you're going to train for this thing that does good, meaningful work, and you're going to use this to overcome, your serious character issues, right?
Yes.
But Sean doesn't join the paranormal Pinkertons for that reason. Now, yes, he does run into a supernatural event, but in the world of Pinkerton's ghosts, and for that matter in the real world, lots of people do, and they don't, run off and join
Yep.
a organization. And Sean doesn't run off and join them, right? Like that's specifically not what happens.
Yes.
So all of this is to say that I think there's something to the point of like, so why does Sean do it? Well, he does it because old Tom thought it would be a good idea to train him for something that would like instill discipline and give him a sense of purpose. And Sean found a sense of purpose, and that's it,
Yep.
right? Like that's the why. Sean found a sense of purpose, and the reason it happened to be with the Pinkertons is because old Tom was a Pinkerton.
Yep. He
That's
could
it.
have joined
Yeah.
Days. He could have been an excellent candidate for a bunch of different places. But he's a paranormal Pinkerton.
Yep. And or he could have not joined any of them at all, right?
Yep.
Like he could have gone into, insurance sales or whatever, and done
Been a
well for
used car
himself. That's kind
salesman.
of the point of the
Yeah,
character.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so John Wick, this isn't necessarily a contrast with John Wick, but it is a point where like, while I don't think that the criticism holds with John Wick specifically, you're right. The point with the dog
Mm.
is that it was like an act of pointless cruelty, right?
Yes.
To differentiate it. But I will say that I think that the criticism has a broader sort of teeth to it, right?
Yes.
I also think that the John Wick creators sort of know that this isn't always necessary because they made another movie. It was not the director, but like the producers, but very intentionally similar in style. It's called Nobody. It's also a decent movie, not as good as John Wick, but fun.
Sure.
It stars Bob Odenkirk, who played Saul in Better Call
Oh,
Saul.
yes, yes. I remember seeing advertisements for it.
Yeah, solid movie. It's pretty funny to see Bob Odenkirk as an action star, but that's literally the point, right? It's called Nobody,
Yes.
like that. He would normally be a nobody, but then you learn that like in the past he claims he used to be an accountant, and then you learn that like they called him the accountant because he settled debts or whatever, which is kind of funny. But in his story, like, yeah, that's his backstory, but they don't really explain, like, oh, why did he go on a killing spree or whatever? Why did he do it? Well, like, somebody stole his daughter's, like, money or something,
Yeah.
right? Like, he
Hey,
just got fed up.
that's
And,
his daughter's
the
money
idea
right
behind the
there.
movie is that, like, he's fed up with being a nobody, right?
Yeah.
So
Sure.
he has these skills, so screw these guys. He's going to go and fight them now. Good movie. I recommend it. Not great, definitely, but good. I liked it. Okay, other movies I watched. We're going old school now. We're going classic. Deep into the dark past of the 80s. I finally, for the first time, like 3 days ago, I watched the original Alien. And like maybe a month or so ago, I watched Aliens. Yes, I did watch it out of order. Uh, uh, the reason I watched it out of order is very simply I was with my siblings and I said, "You want to watch Alien?" And they said no. And I said, "How about Aliens? It's not a horror movie, it's an action movie." And they said, "Yeah, all right, I'm in the mood for that." Like that, it's that simple. There's no complex backstory here, Ben. There's no.
You guys are complex backstory enough.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, so yeah, I watched it out of order. It really doesn't change the experience at all, frankly.
Not really.
I mean, maybe I will say this. Maybe it would if I were watching the original Alien and I didn't know that Ripley would be the survivor. But Ripley is so omnipresent in pop culture. I can't imagine someone not knowing that.
Uh-huh.
So like, no, it didn't change anything. Like, I knew Ripley was going to survive, and whether I had watched it first or not. Uh, both of them are classics for a reason. They are both very good movies. Uh, Personally, I think that the original Alien is better. They are very, very, very different movies, completely different. But that's kind of the genius, is that they are both completely different. But Aliens is a perfect sequel to Alien, right? Like, it is exactly in one very real way. It's exactly how you make a sequel, right? Like, Alien is about one alien kills an entire ship of people and nearly kills Ripley, and it's the perfect life form. Well, now she's trapped on a whole planet of aliens, right?
A
And instead
planet
of
of
just her,
aliens.
yeah, and instead of just her trying to survive, she also needs to protect someone else, right?
Yes.
You've upped the stakes successfully, which is exactly what you're supposed to do in a sequel. So, in that sense, Aliens is like prototypical of what you would expect to see in a sequel,
Yes.
right? Uh, but in another very real sense, it's like such a completely different movie. Like, completely. Uh, the original Alien is 100% and totally a slow burn, atmospheric horror film
Mm-hmm.
in down to its bones, like its DNA, right? It is not an action movie at all.
Right.
Like, there's maybe one action scene at the very, very, very end when Ripley kills the alien, if you even count it as that, which I wouldn't, right? There's almost no action scene. I mean, I guess they do shoot at it at some points, but
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
it's not even really fighting them.
It's
Yeah.
it's an action.
Uh,
It's an action sequence. I'm sorry, not an action sequence. A horror sequence. Excuse me.
yeah, exactly. Right? Like, it is not an action movie at all. It's not presenting itself as an action movie. It is not paced like an action movie. It is paced like a slasher slash monster movie, which is what it is, right? It is a slasher slash monster film. Uh,
Hmm.
Much more in line with like Halloween, than anything else, honestly. Halloween is actually a pretty good comparison in more ways than you would think.
I do like
It's
Halloween quite a bit actually.
Halloween is a great movie, but uh, I mean, my favorite horror movie, and I think it still is, even though I liked Alien, is The Thing. It's compared to The Thing a lot for obvious reasons. The Thing did come out after Alien. The Thing definitely has its own identity, though.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's a very different movie, but you could see why there are similarities, right? Like, no question. Uh, but it definitely has its own flavor. They're very different movies. I would go so far as to say that I hesitate to say that The Thing is strictly better than Alien.
Mm.
They're just different, right?
Yes, I agree.
They're very different. Uh, so why do I think Alien is better than Aliens? Partially, it's taste, right? Like, uh, you can't really get around that. Like, since they're both so good. Uh, but I think there's more to it than that. One thing about Aliens is that when I was watching it, there were moments in Aliens where I was kind of bored because I knew it was an action movie
Aw.
and I was kind of waiting for the action
Yeah.
at times. Now, when the action hit, it was excellent action. And I
Yes.
wouldn't say that any of the scenes are unnecessary, right? But nevertheless, it was definitely like, okay, I know this is an action movie. So when is the action, right? Uh,
Yes.
Alien, however, I think it being a horror movie made it so that even though it's actually a much slower paced movie than Aliens, with a lot more slow scenes, I felt more like all of the scenes were contributing to the whole, if that makes sense, right?
Yes.
It wasn't just all like, okay, this is the necessary exposition for us to get to the really cool action stuff, which is sometimes how I felt in Aliens. In Alien, it was like, yeah, these scenes are all necessary exposition, but it's all working towards building an atmosphere of dread and horror, right? Like,
Yes.
of being trapped and being surrounded by these people. Now, the most interesting thing to me about Alien, though, it's a debate and a bit of a debate, I would say, that I had like with family members and with other people. I think that Ripley, the character of Ripley, absolutely for the movie to. I'm not saying the movie wouldn't have worked, but for the movie to have worked as well as it did, she absolutely had to be a woman.
Yes.
Uh, She had to be. Even though, like, people go like, but the character is written in such an androgynous way. She doesn't do anything stereotypically feminine. She is like a very um androgynously written character, right? Like that you could see how in the script it was originally a guy. This is all true, right? And I
Yeah.
don't dispute any of it, but she had to be a woman. Not for the movie necessarily to work, but for it to work as well as it did. Uh, and there are many reasons for this. So the trope in horror movies is final girl, right?
Yep.
Uh, Now, what's interesting is that when you read about like the creation of Alien and why the character of Ripley wasn't a woman, part of that reason is they wanted to subvert the final girl trope, right? The problem is though that's like Ryan Johnson style subversion, right? Where you are subverting something for the sake of doing it,
Yeah.
just to surprise with no larger reason,
Mm-hmm.
right? The truth is, if you're going to subvert the final girl trope, you are going to need to justify it in a way that is beyond, I just don't want to do it,
Yep.
right? And they don't uh, in the script. And correctly, it's really interesting, actually, right?
Yeah.
Someone tried using my profile picture on Discord, cropped Anthony's face off, and then tried. That is hysterically funny. Uh, I'm gonna keep going though. I just read Caitlin's comment. That okay. Anyway,
You're a
going back to what
popular
I was
man,
saying though.
Anthony.
Yeah, that is extremely funny. Uh, whatever. Anyway, the point I'm making though is the final girl trope is a thing for a reason. Tropes exist for a reason. I've had this discussion with El Jaji Lamplighter and John C. Wright, and we actually ran into it in a really interesting way when we were creating the story Rewcastle Manor Mystery.
Yes.
Uh, so this is what I mean and why I'm saying this. So Rewcastle Manor Mystery, I'm going to go into a bit because it's a good example of what I'm talking about. That was a pastiche, very intentional, of a Conan Doyle story. The Conan Doyle story is known as The Copper Beeches. It's a Sherlock Holmes story. It's a great story in its own right, by the way, and I highly recommend it. But the story is about a girl who gets work as a governess, which is sort of at the time was like a kind of a live-in nanny, right? In a rich person's house, on an estate known as the Copper Beeches. And the guy has a dog that roams around the house and is very dangerous if you go, if you face him alone, right? And
Uh-huh.
she sees these weird things going on in the house, and for some reason they want her hair, right? Like he has this weird thing with her hair, and she reports all of this to Holmes, who comes in and saves her from the guy. And you learn that they hired her because her particular hair looked like the hair of their daughter, who they were like locking up in the basement, and they were trying to make it seem like she was happy at home so that her suitor would stop coming to the house, right? Uh, that's the Conan Doyle story. In Rewcastle Manor Mystery, I took the basic premise of a girl goes to a house and the guy who hired her to go there is acting strange and he has a creepy dog, right? And we tried to work through, well, how would things change? Well, the one thing that I changed was that I made the implied, like, there was sort of an implication that maybe there was kidnapping or supernatural stuff going on in the original story. And then Conan Doyle shies away from that. Like, he does this in The Hound of the Baskervilles, too, right? Like, oh, maybe it's supernatural, but it's
Yes.
really not. Uh, Copper Beaches does this. It's the same thing. Like, oh, maybe it's supernatural, but it's really not. Well, we just made it actually supernatural. Like, why they need her hair for some sort of weird ritual, right?
Yes.
Uh, but we were trying to figure out like the flow of the story. And as we slowly sat and worked through the story, what we realized is that the original decisions that Conan Doyle made were almost always just the objectively correct decision, right? For
Yes.
what would make the best story. The big one was the dog, where we were trying to figure out what to do with the dog. Now, what does Conan Doyle do with the dog? Well, what Conan Doyle does with the dog is that at the dramatic climax of the story, the dog attacks them and they have to shoot it dead. right? So we were discussing over and over what to do with the dog. Finally, we settled on at the climax of the story, the dog attacks them and Sean has to shoot it dead. Uh, and we came up with this basically independently of the original Conan Doyle story due to process of elimination of every other idea, right? And
Yes.
this one ended up being like, yeah, this is the best, this is the most exciting and the best way of doing it. All of this is to say that tropes are not magic, right? Like they
Yes.
exist for a reason. This was the way that Conan Doyle did it. He was a master. He knew his stuff. It was the objectively best way to structure the story. It was the best storytelling decision to make in that moment. If I am going to reuse his plot, then I need to have a very good reason why I'm going to be doing something differently. Otherwise, I am just going to be making an objectively worse storytelling decision, right?
Yep.
Uh, so I say all of this about Alien then. You go back to the final girl trope. Well, why is it the final girl and not something else, right? Why not the final guy? Why do you have a final character at all? Why not just kill everyone, right?
Kill
Okay.
everyone.
So what was that?
Kill.
Yeah, I know.
Kill.
Sometimes they do kill everyone, and those are like subversions. Uh, but the reason you have the final girl is girls are weaker. Right? That's
Yep.
one major thing. So it is theoretically more unexpected for the girl to survive, right?
Yes.
You kill off the strong characters, you leave the more vulnerable character. The second, and the audience is just naturally going to feel in that way towards a girl.
Yep.
Alien leans into this, right? So what do they do at the end of the movie? Now, they don't lean into it for most of the movie, but they very intentionally lean into it at the end of the movie. Ripley is alone and strips into her underwear, right?
Yep.
Why do they have this scene? Well, you go, now there's the cynical reason, which is also true. Like, oh, because they wanted, to get an ass shot of Sigourney Weaver. Uh, right?
Yes.
Which is funny because she has no ass. But anyway, uh, they want, right? Like, and that's definitely true. But I don't think that that's the end of it, right? Alien is not really that type of movie anyway. It would have been the only time in the entire movie that they had like a cheesecake shot,
Yes.
right? Uh, the real reason that they do this, the larger storytelling reason, is that Ripley in this moment is incredibly vulnerable, right?
Yep.
Now, you could do this with a male character, obviously, but let's be frank here. Unless the male character is frumpy and ugly and weak, right? They strip off their clothes, they don't really look that weak, right?
Yep.
They look like you see muscles, you see musculature.
Yep.
And if you make him frumpy and ugly and weenie, you don't really sympathize with the guy as much.
Yep.
Now, this is kind of psychological, but it's also like, okay, so this dude doesn't take care of himself, right?
Yep.
Like, that's weird. Now,
Well,
if you
there's a
do that with a
reason why,
woman,
like, every butcher who's ever been like a villain in a story has been tremendously fat. Like, there's like
yep,
there's whole like books that could be written about the different tropes like bodies portray, and most people focus on the women, but in reality, there's a whole language to men as well that
yes.
people underestimate quite severely.
So, going back to Alien, though, you strip Sigourney Weaver down. What do you see instead? Like, what is the difference here? Well, Sigourney Weaver is clearly in shape, right? She is
Mm-hmm.
clearly healthy. She takes care of herself.
Yep.
So when you see her stripped down, you're not going like, oh, this is a dude who doesn't take care of herself. But she is still weak because she's a woman,
Yeah.
right? So instead, this is just somebody who is inherently always more vulnerable, right?
Yep.
So that's a big part of it, and that vulnerability increases the horror and increases the suspense of the moment because she is less likely, even if it's not like on a statistical level, is she less likely? Well, probably only marginally, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Sci-fi. It's like so. The thing with sci-fi is that if it's done right and people want to play like gender weirdness, it's like, look, if a girl's pumped up with hydro, uh, what's it called?
I have
If
no idea,
if
but
she's got
I
like
get what you
sci-fi,
mean.
if she's got like sci-fi weaponry, like like what's the saying go? Uh, God made men, but Samuel Colt made them equal, or something like that. It's like that. Like if it doesn't matter who or what or whatever. If somebody's sniping at you, from 100 yards away, you're dead the same anyway. You don't get to like check the gender of your sniper first. This is dumb. I can't believe I said that, Anthony.
Mm, I have nothing to add. No. I'm gonna keep going though, because this analysis is actually kind of important to like the
Yes.
language of storytelling and movies and things, and it's a
Yes.
discussion that people need to have as well. So when you look at the decision making for why they made Ripley a woman, it reflects this, but they don't talk about it in as concrete a way as we do. We are authors and storytellers, and more than that, we are people who like to spend time, both of us, analyzing these things, right? Most people don't. They have a more intuitive sense of it. You know, they'll, however,
Yes.
if you like piece together why they made the decision, they're kind of talking about a lot of the same things. So Ripley in the original script was originally male. This is like an established fact. I can easily believe this. I'm not surprised at all by that, in fact, because again, Ripley in a lot of ways is written somewhat androgynously, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's also not that surprising. Like, I'm not even blaming them for this, because you write things in the original script, you go over it, and then you make changes. Okay,
Yeah.
right? Fine. So why did they make this change? Well, there were a few reasons. One of them is that female action stars were actually big at the time
Yep.
due to Terminator. Uh,
Yep.
like Terminator is another one, by the way, where Sarah Connor being female is absolutely essential to the story.
Yep.
Uh,
It's a reason why it never like nobody went, wow, female ass kicker. It's like, well, there's a reason for that. It's a story about motherhood in a way. What would you do?
yeah, I will also note that in Aliens, they really lean into the motherhood aspect with Ripley,
Yepers.
which I think was correct.
Yep.
I think that was the right decision. Uh, but in the original Alien, so you see, we'll go like, okay, so there's the cynical reason, but then there's the other thing, which is one of the producers or like one of the writers or something says, I thought it would be more interesting if Ripley was a woman because having a woman survive would be more unexpected. He is correct, right? Like this is essentially a large part of what we're talking about here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's also the fact like why do you need to have a final survivor? Well, for one thing, having a character to root for is just generally good storytelling. It's
Yes.
not always strictly necessary, but it's one of those rules where if you're going to break it, you better really, really know why, right? Like, you better have a very direct reason that you can explain and that is clear to the audience why you're breaking this rule, right?
Yes.
Doing it arbitrarily will not work. So,
Mm-hmm.
you want to have a character that you can root for, someone who can win the fight. Like, for one thing, the alien is stronger than all of them. It's not really very interesting if all of them die, right?
Yes.
Like, so the monster that's stronger than everyone kills everyone. Well, okay. That's not really very fun. Uh, Much more interesting is having a survivor. But who should survive? Well, you have all of those characters, and one of them is the cool, calm, collected, intelligent Ripley, right? When you watch the movie, Ripley comes off as the character who is the smartest and most rational, and arguably the most cold blooded. She correctly, at the beginning of the movie, wants to leave the man who got infected by the alien parasite outside, and
Yep.
she's overruled by Ash, who you learn later is an android that was programmed to bring in the alien by the company, right?
Yes.
So essentially a traitor. Uh, right? She
Yep.
is overruled by she's overruled. But her decision would have objectively been correct, but is very cold blooded. So in a sense, she is actually kind of the perfect person to survive this alien attack, right? Because she is intelligent and is willing to make difficult decisions at the even if it means getting other people angry at her or not or those decisions aren't pleasant for her, right? Uh, yeah. Now you see all this, however, she is not physically strong, and the xenomorph is a physically incredibly imposing monster. There is another factor here, too, that is very specific to Alien, which is that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that the alien is very female coded. Aliens leans into this hard, right? Uh, with the Queen Mother, with the fact that it's a battle of mothers at the end of the movie with Newt, right? Uh, but the original Alien, it's
Yep.
also there, like 100%. The chest burster is clearly, and they have confirmed this many times over in interviews, right? But even if you watch it, like, it is so clearly a metaphor for pregnancy. Uh, like, it's not a subtle one either. Uh, so that's another
It's not
reason that
subtext,
these,
it's just text.
yeah, exactly,
One more
right?
good-
Uh,
go for one more good round.
So that's another reason I think it's very important that Ripley, as the lone survivor, is female, right?
Yes.
Because it's also a battle of like all of the men in the crew die to this thing because they don't know how to handle things like childbirth, right? They can't handle the fact that this thing is living in them and bursting out of them. Now there is one woman on the crew, however. Besides Ripley, I mean. However, this woman, unlike Ripley, is extremely feminine coded, right? And what I mean is, like, she is hysterical and emotional, by far the most of the crew, right? So you could see why, in a situation like, again, going through the metaphor of the alien representing motherhood, which it clearly does, because it causes pregnancies that burst out and kill people, right? She couldn't handle it. She is the wrong. You need a sort of strength to be a mother, right? Is the theory. You need to be strong. You need to handle a difficult scenario. This woman can't do it. Ripley, on the other hand, can. She has the emotional and intellectual and moral strength, right? To handle this. The final girl trope is something like the other thing too, and this is another reason that's always the final girl. Like, and again, people will change it and they will subvert it, but the final girl is always the most famous. Men generally, and all people more broadly, are just going to naturally feel more sympathetic to a vulnerable woman. It activates a flight or a fight response in men, right? Where you really want the woman to survive, even if it costs you your life, which is one of the reasons that you really it's always ends up being a woman who survives at the end of the movie. It's kind of a double whammy. They are the least likely by the rules of the world to survive, but you're also going to really be rooting for them to survive, right? Just naturally by the fact that they're a woman without them doing anything else.
Yes.
Right? And they lean into this vulnerability with Ripley at the end of the movie. Then Aliens picks up on a lot of the subtext in the original Alien and turns it into text, right? Where they really lean into the fact that Ripley is a woman by giving her the role of mother of Newt and having her battle with the alien queen over because she killed a lot of her children, right?
Yep.
So, and that's another reason that Aliens is a great sequel. It builds on ideas in the original. It is, however, very different. Like I said, it's an action movie. It's got great action scenes. I will note one of the most interesting things is that I don't think either movie is particularly quotable. Aliens has like 2 memorable lines. One of them is the "Game Over Man," which is more of a meme than a line.
It's true.
And
Game
the other
over,
is when
man. Game over.
It's a little silly, even in context, to be honest with you. But I'm heavily nitpicking. Yeah. When the other line is at the end when she shows up and goes like, "Not my daughter, you bitch," or something.
Yes.
Which J.K. Rowling then ripped off in Harry Potter.
Wait, who?
Oh, you didn't know this? At the end of the Deathly Hallows, after when Ginny is So Ginny Weasley is getting attacked, and her mother shows up and goes, "Not my daughter, you bitch," and kills Bellatrix. And I'm
Oh,
like, okay, but that line's from Aliens.
well,
Uh,
I've only seen the movies like once.
oh yeah,
The
no,
Harry Potter movies.
I just
Yeah.
find that very funny. Uh,
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's pretty great. I mean, it's a great line
but
in general. Like, for fuck, like basically for a woman to say it, it's a fantastic line. Like fighting another woman.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, there we go.
It's a good scene. It's a good line.
I didn't want to
Uh,
use commie speak, Anthony. That's why
I know,
I
I
paused for a
understand.
second.
Uh, the original, but yeah, those are like pretty much the only two memorable lines in Aliens. I don't remember any other line. Uh, and in the original Alien, I can't remember any dialogue, which is kind of interesting because what's weird about this is that I consider both movies great movies, right?
Yes.
Like, so it's kind of interesting that I don't remember any of the dialogue in the
Well,
original Alien.
there's very little
Uh,
dialogue in Alien that matters, quite frankly. Um, like as weird as it is to say, like you don't watch Alien for dialogue. Uh,
I
like
mean, like it's kind of the same with the Thing too, though, right? Like, what memorable lines are in the Thing? I mean, I could think of one, which is Kurt Russell going like fuck you," as he throws the dynamite
well, there's
at
also
the.
the no one trusts each other and we're all very tired.
Oh yeah, that
And
moment is
the
kind of
stupid game anyway, and then he burns out the chess machine.
See, that one I think though was more of a meme than really like a super
Sure.
memorable line. But I think though that we don't trust each other and we're all very tired. You're right. That was a good moment. Uh, I remember scenes in the Thing vividly,
Oh yeah,
but I
but
don't remember like the exact dialogue of it. Like I remember the blood scene, you know, where I vaguely remember the black guy like looking and going like, "Turns out I'm not turns out I'm not a monster" or something. But I can't remember exactly what he said. But he stares daggers at Kurt Russell and goes like, "I'm not a monster." It's like, "Well, I'm not a monster, am I, Kurt?" or something. I don't even remember Kurt Russell's character's name.
it
This is
doesn't
kind
matter.
of one of the things people talk about with The Thing. And Alien is often considered the better movie, but the thing is, I think in this way, both movies are very similar in that the characters aren't super memorable and they're
Yeah,
not the point,
right.
right?
Like
Like, of either movie.
Child's and so people remember Child's names because he was like the memorable black man, but like with
Yeah. I do remember Childs.
yeah, Child's it's fantastic name. Um, the other guys had names like there was like one of them was just named Doc. Okay, like what's
What do you
like
even do with that?
what do you do with that? It's perfectly serviceable, or maybe he was just a doctor or something. But
And they called him Doc.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like the point is that like um, I'm trying to think my through saying it is that like that's not the point of the movie. Like Pride and Prejudice. Elizabeth Bennet is the important one. Charles Bingley and Colin Firth. That's not his name, but that's the famous actor who I care about playing him. Um,
Yep.
you Darcy, Mr. Darcy are the important three characters. Then I believe her older sister's named Jessica. Then there's Lydia, who's famous because she went with the evil Mr. Bingham. And then the mother and father are just named Mr. Bennett and Mrs. Bennett. And then there's a bunch of other characters that are quite frankly less important. But I've just named the names of five characters for a book I've never read, for a movie I've seen, like twice or three times or something, and a series I've seen once. But the thing is that what's the focus of Pride and Prejudice? And I've read
Right.
Pride and
It's the
Prejudice and Zombies.
relationships.
It's the relationships. So the names and the characters and how they relate to each other are immensely more important than in Alien, Thing, Terminator. Like the only name you have to remember is John Connor and Sarah Connor. Um, Maybe T1000, T800. Maybe you need to remember those names a bit, but not really. That sort of thing. It's what am I? It's like because of the focus of those movies, really in movies like Halloween, you don't even need the name of the main villain. It's perfectly serviceable as Michael Myers, but at the same time, no, he never actually needs a name. His name never really comes up. Like it's sure he's got people that he's kind of going after, but that's more of a creation of like needing to have a little plot to excuse the murders more than anything else. Why is Michael Myers out murdering again? Well, because Michael Myers, who's referred to as the Shape in his own movies, and I love these movies by the way, which is why I know so much. Is brought out by an ancient cult because he's some sort of antichrist figure. You know, it's bullshit, but it gives you some great murders. And then there was H2O, which was a MTV reality TV stunt where they killed everyone except for Ice Cube, and then said it was a
Amazing.
movie. No one missed him. Nobody missed him. And they kept Ice Cube alive, and that was the only thing that mattered.
That's pretty funny. Uh, yeah, like here's the thing: horror movies are one of those things where, like, if you ask me, I would say I wasn't a huge fan of horror movies. But then you actually go into the number of horror movies that I like, and it's like higher than I would even have expected. Like, that happens sometimes. Like, you go like, oh, I'm not really a fan of this guy or whatever. I just like, and then you go get through like 5 movies, and you're like, oh, man, never mind. Uh,
Right.
Jimmy Stewart's a big one. Where I go like, I'm not really a huge Jimmy Stewart fan. I think of like 5 or 6 Jimmy Stewart movies I like, and I go, actually, maybe I am a big Jimmy Stewart fan. Uh, like horror movies are sort of like that for me. Where like, if you ask me, I'd be like, oh, I'm not a huge horror movie fan, but I actually like a lot of horror movies. But with that said, the thing about the horror movie, I don't like horror just because it's horror. Like there are people be like, oh, I'm gonna watch, I'm gonna go and see like I don't know, Paranormal 7 in theaters because I like the first Paranormal movie. Uh, and you go like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I don't care about that. It doesn't matter to me at all. I'm not gonna watch any of the Alien movies past 2. Right? Like
I
they're
mean,
all
there aren't any,
worthless.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Um, and yes, I don't think Alien 3 is interesting and failed. They killed Newt in the first 5 minutes. That's such an unconscionably bad decision that I cannot possibly even slightly recommend that movie. That is so mind-bogglingly dumb. Uh, yeah, I'm not even going to pretend that Alien 3 is
Right.
worth watching. I'm never watching another Alien movie. It's Aliens 1 and 2 and nothing else. But like when I go through the horror movies I like Alien. I love The Thing, one of my all-time favorite movies. Uh,
Yeah.
I love Jaws. That made it into my top 10 list. That's actually a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I liked Jurassic Park. Again, definitely a horror movie, especially clear when you rewatch it. That's kind of the biggest difference between the original Jurassic Park and every preceding or succeeding Jurassic Park movie is that the original Jurassic Park is structured and presented as a horror movie. Like, no questions. It's very clear. It is a slasher movie, and the Raptors are the slashers.
Yep.
Like, it is shot and directed, and like everything about it points in that way, right? The
Yep.
soundtrack, and it's a great movie.
Yeah.
Uh, and I liked the original Scream. I know that a lot of people don't because it's extremely meta. I totally understand that. I could see why someone wouldn't. I don't begrudge it. I thought it was fun. uh, Scream 2, on the other hand, even though it has very good reviews, is not very good and not worth watching, in my opinion. Uh, but I like the original Scream. So there's like 5 horror movies off the top of my head that I'm a big fan of.
Yep. Eh,
So, I
yeah.
guess it's better to say that, like, yeah, you can impress me if you're a horror movie. You just have to be one of the consensus best movies of all time. uh,
Yeah.
then I'll probably like you. I don't know. Would you count Godzilla minus one as a horror movie?
Uh, mm, I mean, from everything everyone says, it's more of a human drama, quite frankly.
Uh, I would tend to agree with that. I don't even consider the original Godzilla is closer to a horror movie.
Yeah, so the original
Certainly.
Godzilla, and maybe the second Godzilla, I can't remember much about it. The Godzilla that's set in America is almost a horror movie. It has its moments, um, which they randomly kill for some reason. Uh,
Yep.
but no, there's some great scenes where they're like trying to tempt out the monster, and the monster just comes at them through a building. Like it's fantastic. Not the same tension as like a Velociraptor scene from Jurassic Park, but still pretty up there. Then we have Shin Godzilla. That's the other one. So you have two definite horrors: original Godzilla and Shin Godzilla, and then partials with Godzilla with Matthew Broderick in it and Godzilla with, minus one. The Godzilla new films that they do is just not horror. They don't really have much horror. Kong
Yeah, I would get you.
Island has a little horror to it, especially when
It's
they're
got a bit. I would
yeah.
agree.
I would
I saw
action
I
horror.
think I saw that movie, like, but I
Yeah,
wasn't paying close attention. I found it to be fine. I did not love it, but it had its moments. Yeah,
yeah,
one of those films, but I thought it was good. Godzilla minus one is a legitimately great movie that we've discussed it before. It's an
yeah.
actual masterpiece. Uh, the original Godzilla, I would, based on I saw it. Keeping in mind that when I saw that movie, I was like feverish and could barely move, and I like said, "I'm gonna finally watch Godzilla for the first time." uh, so my recollections maybe should be taken with a grain of salt, but
And then he gets
I
one
did
of those
like it.
super weird ones where it's Godzilla's son, and he's like, oh, "What does it mean?"
No, it was the original, and I did make sure I was sane enough to not watch the American one where they added like Cary Grant or something. Uh,
Huh?
Oh yeah, you don't know that like when Godzilla came out with America, I might be wrong about the specific actor, but they literally just added a random American reporter to be like present and spliced in scenes where he like went to Japan to observe Godzilla. Uh it's very funny.
Okay.
It's dumb as hell and ruins the movie, but
It
it's very
sounds dumb
funny.
as hell, Anthony. It sounds dumb
Yeah.
as hell.
I did not watch that version. I watched the actual original Godzilla, not the one released in America. Uh, and I would probably consider that a horror movie. Uh, it was a very depressing movie, frankly. Uh, it was a good movie. My biggest takeaway from it was I was actually quite impressed by the special effects in the sense of like I was expecting them to be cheesy,
Hmm.
and they were cheesy, but there was also like there were moments in the film that legitimately made me go, based on the technology of the time, I'm actually not sure how they did that.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is like actually like yeah, this looks kind of silly sometimes, but considering what they had available to them,
Right. This
I
was.
can respect how incredibly difficult this must have been
Oh
to
yeah.
pull off. Yeah. Uh, so I really that was impressive. One of the things that impressed me about the original Godzilla too was that Godzilla was not in it that much. Like he was, don't get me wrong. Like there were like a couple of very big scenes centering around Godzilla, right?
Mm.
Like definitely he was like I'm not saying he was not in the movie. He was in it, for example, like I would say a little more than, the shark in Jaws, right?
Yes.
Uh, but a lot of the movie was more about like the impact of Godzilla, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the human drama of it. Uh, And I would say too, like in the original Godzilla, the characters are all pretty likable, pretty good characters.
Yeah.
Uh, like they don't break the mold or anything, but you have a love triangle going on. You got a scientist who's a genius, whose device is being used for evil, but who sacrifices his life and the secret of his device to kill the monster. It's all good stuff, like it works on the thematic and character levels. Like
Yes.
everything fits.
Well, that's all
Um,
you can ask for some of this stuff.
yeah, that's true. And combine that with, very impressive effects, especially for the time. But honestly, even now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the very impressive effects and a famously excellent score and and a lot of atmosphere,
Mm-hmm.
and you could easily see why the original Godzilla became a classic. It's a great movie. I've watched a couple of other Godzilla movies besides minus one. Uh, I haven't seen the 1998. To be honest, I don't really want to. I believe you that it's not terrible. It's just like, is it worth my time though? With all of
I
the things that exist,
uh, uh,
is it worth
uh,
my time?
uh, it's
Uh,
uh, you better be recording instead of not watching this movie.
no,
Uh,
you're actually right though. Like unironically, but anyway, uh, that was my
no,
intent.
like so people
That was
people
my intention.
yeah, yeah. Like people give that movie crap, but quite frankly, it's way better. Like there's one really bad scene, one truly beyond groan worthy, terrible, no good scene, and that's when they throw down the gumballs and the little baby monsters, Godzillas, uh, uh, slip and fall on them. I don't know why they did it. Maybe the kids were too scared and they made the audience too young. Maybe there was something else. Maybe they're just stupid. You know, like
So,
I don't know why they did it. But quite frankly, the rest of it works. It has a fantastic opening sequence with some Japanese fishermen, and then you see the massive feet of Godzilla walking across. You don't
yes.
see the feet, but you see the footprints. Walking across Panama or whatever it was. And then
Okay, so from what I've seen and you're right, by the way, that scene is very, like, I've seen clips of it. It's very cool.
yeah,
But uh, the main thing that I've seen with that movie, and like, it has undergone a bit of a critical resurgence.
no, it
The
hasn't.
main thing what was that?
Who is praising it except for me?
I'll try and find you the video. I can't remember. There
I
was a
will beat
YouTuber,
them
but
to death, so I maintain my status as the only critic loving this
yes.
film.
Uh, I found him a while ago. He goes like, honestly, it's really not that bad of a movie at all. But
Yeah.
uh, the main thing I've seen, like people like, there has been a little bit of like people going, okay, so like maybe we were a little too harsh. But I think what made people mad, and I do agree with this, like this monster, whatever it is clearly just not Godzilla, right? Like we can all understand that this thing is not Godzilla. Now it's a sick monster design. I agree. That's one of the only like clearly good things I should say. Like everybody can recognize that the design of the monster in the 1998 Godzilla is sick as fuck.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
it's very cool, but like I think people's attitudes about it are sort of summed up in Godzilla 2000. There is a
Yes.
very famous scene in that movie, like
Yes.
where Godzilla fights and they call it Zilla, and they tee it up like it's gonna be a big fight scene, and it lasts 7 seconds, and literally like Zilla launches at Godzilla, and then Godzilla steps to the side and swats it with his tail, and it dies. Uh,
Yes.
and that's the fight.
No, no,
I
and he
did. It
goes
was,
that the what's funnier is that the guy goes, that tuna eating piece of shit. I knew better than to trust it in
yeah.
Japanese.
Uh, it's amazing, and I love it. I feel like that's really the attitude. It's not so much that like it's the worst movie ever made, but more like I was expecting a Godzilla movie, and I got random generic monster that for some reason they're all calling Godzilla.
Gojira.
Uh,
Gojira.
Meanwhile,
It's got
like
Luke Besson in it.
eh. Meanwhile, the creator of like the designer of the 1998 Godzilla monster, when they asked him about like what he thought of Godzilla 2000, like, "Are you kidding? I was over the moon that like Toho decided to use my design in a Toho Godzilla movie." He's like, "That's awesome." Uh, which I suppose is a good attitude
Yeah, it's a Chad
to
attitude. It's
have.
great.
Also, apparently there was a cartoon based on the 1998 Godzilla that
Yes.
everybody actually likes.
Yes.
And they're like, okay, actually, this cartoon is fucking awesome.
It's
Uh,
got one of the single best Western openings, like next to MIB's opening. It starts out like with like kind of this bass line that represents the steps it's taking, and then it gets louder, and then the horns come in, and the horns rise, and the bass rises as he fights more and more monsters. Finally, he's clinging on the ruins of the Chrysler Building, surrounded by gigantic monsters roaring defiance to the skies. It goes hard, Anthony. It goes hard. It goes hard, is
yeah,
what I'm
I've
trying to
heard
say.
even people who don't like the movie are like, okay, actually, the cartoon's really good.
Yeah,
So,
it was fun. It was a large part of the Saturday morning for a bit. Mm.
I've never seen it. I'm just going by reputation. Uh, it does look cool. I'll give it that.
Thank you.
And like I said, one thing that I think we can all agree on is like the movie, dislike the movie. The design of the monster in that film is sick.
Yes.
It is a very cool design. And on that note, I have nothing else to add. Those are the movies I've seen.
Okay.
Anything else, Ben?
Bullet Train was pretty great.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, you wanted to talk about Bullet Train. Go ahead.
just real briefly. Essentially, the reason why I wanted to bring up Bullet Train is I saw it and it was way better than I thought it had any right to be. It's got an amazing overarching view on fate from people who essentially don't give a crap about fate and rely on human relationships, to personal vendettas, to wanton cruelty, to just random cruelty, and all sorts of things in between. Um, and it stars Brad Pitt in a great action role. Genuinely, it's a great film. It has some actual it has so I don't really laugh while watching even very funny movies, but it has some like genuinely funny movies. It lands the climax. Um, it has a whole bunch of different things to it that are just absolutely hilarious, like Tangerine. Uh, yeah, I think it's Tangerine. Always talking about Thomas the Tank Engine, and then he like sticks a diesel sticker on somebody, and his partner Lemon, who thinks he's dead, finds the diesel sticker on his killer and tries to kill his partner's supposed killer. That sort of thing. Like there's actually like brilliant moments of foreshadowing and interaction, and I'm shocked that Bullet Train was kind of slept on, just for how good it is. Like it's like none of the action scenes failed. All the blood and violence was fairly fantastic. Um, I genuinely can't think of any major flaws. Various characters had realistic motivations. Family and fate and revenge are all different scenes on it, and there's sort of a justice system that's being applied here. Because a character was noble and tried to, well, not noble. He wasn't a noble character. He was an evil character, but he acted nobly to try and help his dear friend. Um, uh, he gets to survive, but his friend, who was really kind of just motivated by revenge, because he thought he had died, and he did die. It looks like, um, sort of made some bad decisions, and did something that sort of angered the wrath of heaven or something like that. And it's sort of all over the place, and it doesn't like choose favorites. The man who's reluctant to kill is the one who's most, quote unquote, protected. While the man who kills for revenge has to go through some severe punishment. But the man who kills for revenge but does it in a circumspect, appropriate manner, is also, punished a little bit. He's beat up a bit, but he's also, survives. Whereas a different character who is very much aggressive and, murderous in many regards, also survives, but survives like the least well. The only exception being a certain character I don't want to mention who survives and quite frankly should have died. Um, but, hey, it's not that bad. Like, it doesn't ruin the movie. It's a pretty great joke. Because the main character tries to talk people down from murdering him. Like, hey, listen, have you tried yoga? You've got a lot of stress. And, I
That's
don't
pretty
want to.
funny.
And basically, he's trying to convince them not to murder him. But what he's really doing is convincing them not to make him kill them. And it's a pretty good set. Um, and it has that great mix of like action comedy and action drama that just create this sweet and sour sauce that was like just ah chef's kiss. Like it's a movie I could see myself going back to and enjoying. Date night, normal night, like it's one of those things. I wouldn't call it like a top 10 movie, but if it was ever put on, even if I had seen it recently, I wouldn't complain. um
Hmm.
and it's set on a train. And it's a great action scene, and it's got Brad Pitt and a whole bunch of other people. The jokes land. Um, and I think I'm just going to go on a quick tangent for a little bit about fate in stories. One of the things that I think is done pretty poorly overall is fate in stories. And I think that's because people don't really understand fate when they're trying to write it. In the same way that somebody who's, shall we say, a midwit can't understand somebody who's truly a genius. They think it's as simple as somebody like pulling out like little bits of information and then being able to figure out what's going on there. But the better explanation is that a genius is somebody who is able to jump the gap better than the normal person, including the midwit, who is more like a normie than they realize. So, in other words, like the reason why math geniuses are geniuses is not because they can do the numbers well, they can multiply better, is because they understand the fundamental principles and can use them to jump gaps wider than any human has and ought to do. Um, in the normal circumstances of things. In the same way, if you take something like another good one, like language, like a genius author. In reality, the genius author is one who gets out of the way of his stories, who understands the subtleties of letting inspiration flow through you rather than forcing inspiration out to meet some deadline or to vomit something out that you think will sell. And not everyone, quite frankly, should be a writer. Most people who write are not geniuses by any stretch of the imagination. So when people write about fate, most of the time it doesn't feel like, or karma, or anything, or luck, or similar things, it doesn't feel like they understand those subjects when they come to it. For the Christian, it's very easy. It's all as God wills. I found $1 on the ground. Praise God, I am a happy man, for I have found a random piece of money on the ground. Uh, or something horrible happening. I was rear-ended. Oh, unhappy man, I've been rear-ended. Oh God, help me in my time of need. Who allowed this to happen? uh, there's there's a complicated sort of relationship between the man and God and fate and everything else like that, but is actually fairly well explained overall. In the same way that someone's trying to describe a great man like Napoleon, who was clearly fated to be who he was, and was given inspiration to be Napoleon. The same, bless you. The same way with Julius Caesar, with Alexander the Great, and everything else like that. People want to talk shit on Alexander the Great. Oh, he just inherited daddy's armies. Yeah, but other people have inherited daddy's armies, and they burned for it. They
Ew.
couldn't do.
Who's talking shit about Alexander the Great? I just want to talk.
Hey, buddy, we should work out. I want you to do a personal best on the bench press. I'll be there for you, bro. I'll spot for you, bro. Anyway,
It's fine. I just want to talk.
it's fine. It's
Um,
fine. But you see, like it's there's a gap that has to be understood to right. One of the things I feel is undersold in Book of the New Sun is how ambitious the main character is. If you read people's reviews about the book and how people interact with the book, they say that he's just lucking into things or that things are happening to him, when clearly he's making decisions about what's most advantageous to him at any given time and making a decision to follow up on that opportunity or not follow up on that opportunity. He in the beginning of the book, he's sitting under what he believes is his family crest and may actually be his family crest, depending on how you interpret it. You see him making interactions with people that clearly show he's thinking way deeper about things and is way more ambitious than he's letting on. When the second he's the top boy, he beats up his second in command to make sure he's loyal to him, and then between the two of them, they take over the rest of the boys, which is the appropriate thing he should have done, by the way, as oldest apprentice for the torturers. He clearly takes his time to learn things that he has no business learning if he was just a humble torturer, lucking his way through life. No, he has a will and he's using it, and he's using it to try and get his way through things, to his best advantage. He kills that one chick because or lets her kill herself, excuse me, I should be very accurate, because he couldn't get anything more out of her and decided that he was going to see if what would happen if he gets sent away. He turned himself in immediately. That's not the reaction of somebody who fears punishment or is lucking into different circumstances or is acting on sentimental instinct. I know, did you ever read Book of the New Sun, Anthony, by Gene Wolfe?
I tried to read it and gave up.
Okay. Well, don't worry about it then. But the thing is that he's pursuing like leadership and power and influence. But the thing is, he doesn't admit it. He doesn't talk about it like that. He talks about him just wandering around doing things. Oh, I wish I was part of the noble house and knew my family. Oh, and I have an understanding of hierarchies and how to manipulate them. You don't just get that. Like you don't naturally look at a hierarchy and goes, I'm gonna subvert that without a single thought in my head. And I think, in that way, like Gene Wolfe understood it. The guy's self narration is very clearly, just doing his life, but making choices that benefit him. The same way with other things that show up other books. But then you look at like a lot of the low grade military sci-fi, not the stuff written by Nick Cole and Jason Ansbach, but I want to be very specific, but like other low grade stuff where you have even people who are supposed to be great, but they often just don't have any actual spark of greatness to them, except that the person tries to treat them as if they're still great. In other words, they know they have to have a great admiral or a great general or whatever, but they don't actually know how to apply them in real life. Maybe it's because they read up too much modern military history. Maybe it's because they're too interested in the German generals or the American generals or something like that, who are interesting characters. But quite frankly, they're another example of how they talked is not exactly how they thought. There's a reason why I believe it was General MacArthur was talking about nuking northern China and turning North Korea into a wasteland. He understood what China was about, and he felt that he couldn't really talk about the details that anyone could see if they saw the pressure and the numbers and the how they were able to put up a fight in the Korean War. Um, it was obvious to us now, but it wasn't obvious then, and there wasn't a good way to communicate that. Not that I'm saying he'd be right or anything like that. I'm just saying that there's more to what he's was doing than let's nuke the chinks or whatever. Like it wasn't as simple as that. In the same way, for random scientists. In reality, what people try to do for a great scientist really does them a disservice. Most scientists were products of great work, efforts, years of experiments and failures, that ended with often tragedy. Madame Curie famously died of radiation poisoning, if I'm recall, or cancer from radiation, or something like that. Point is, radium killed her. But did she just immediately jump to death? Or did she immediately jump to radium? No, it took her like a decade and a half or something ridiculous like that. I don't know. I haven't really bothered to look into the timeline, but I know that she started when she was young and she died when she was middle aged to old. Uh, but you don't want to read about, yeah, day 4750. Uh, Tried a different solution. It glowed a little more in the dark. We're getting close. And then like they don't actually get a breakthrough for another year. Like it does. It's not interesting. It doesn't make a good narration. So when it comes to things like karma and fate, people miss out on the actual reasoning and thoughts behind it. Fate is fated does not mean that there's a prophecy that determines every step of your life, or of the life of the character. What it means is that there must be a path that a character must follow, and he must be rewarded for it. In the case of things like karma, he must follow the same rules as everybody else, except that the way he follows the rules, quote unquote, pleases karma. The Christian must obey God, or God will allow things in his life to bring him back to God. And I don't think most authors of those calibers really understand that. But I think they really understood it in the movie Bullet Train more than you see on average. There's a famous thing about, Sherlock, where, really they're just like dumb people's ideas of the show Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch, where really it's just sort of like
Oh yeah.
a dumb person's idea of what a smart person is because they don't
So
understand what the Sherlock scan is. What's
this
up?
is completely right. Coming from somebody who years ago, like I 100% would have called Sherlock my favorite show.
Yes.
Uh,
The first
like
season was pretty decent.
the first season was good. I think the second season was good as well, mostly.
Sure.
I like the Hounds of Baskerville at least, and I like the Reichenbach Fall. Although the Reichenbach Fall is kind of harmed in retrospect, but whatever. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Uh, the meme, which is a very funny meme and dead on, by the way,
Yes.
is like Sherlock. The one that goes Sherlock is a dumb person's idea of what a smart person is like. It's like it goes. Imagine that you have like a crime is committed, and then Sherlock. So you see, Sherlock's brains are blown out. He is shot point blank. He's lying on the ground dead, and the villain is like, "Yes, I've won." And then Sherlock jumps out of the ceiling and goes, "Aha, I caught you." And then go, "What?" And then go, "What you didn't know is that I knew that you knew that when you stepped into the room, that you'd step into that exact spot, and it would trigger this, and right, like, and go, but how could you have known that? Because I'm really smart. And then Watson steps forward and goes, but Sherlock, none of this makes any sense. I just saw your brains get blown out onto the floor. Look, your body's right there. That's clearly you. I'm not blind, Sherlock. And then
Right.
Sherlock looks at the camera and winks, and then they cut to the credits. That's like, yeah, that's like the Reichenbach Fall. Like, the thing about the Reichenbach Fall and why it didn't age well is, they have the whole fake death at the end, which fans were speculating on. What makes it so disappointing in retrospect is that it becomes very clear in the next episode that not only are we not given the solution, but there clearly isn't a solution, right? Like, oh, wait
Yes.
a minute, they actually didn't think this out at all. Like, there are so many holes in this, and it
Yes.
is in fact impossible. And they're just sort of expecting you to go like, well, Sherlock's really smart, so he figured it out. And you go like, what? But he can't. That's not how smart
Right.
works. Like, you can't just do impossible things and
Yes.
just go, oh, you're too dumb to understand it. Uh,
Yes.
which then like gets turned up to 11 when you get to the like. Honestly, we really got to talk one day. I think we should do a show on this, the Sherlock finale, because
I
it
never
is
watched the
truly
Sherlock
one of the.
finale.
What was that?
I gave up in the middle of season 2 when they
I
did that
know,
thing
but
where they had that star thing, and I thought, oh, fuck off,
I
Yakaba.
understand, but I really need to emphasize
Watch
to
it.
you just how
I'm gonna have to
absolutely
watch it.
in. Oh no, you shouldn't
You can't make
watch.
me
It's
watch it,
awful.
Anthony. I'm across the
It's
country.
next
I'm
level
in
bad.
St. Louis. You'll never make it past East St. Louis, Anthony. You'll never make it past East St. Louis. You can't make me.
But I want to be able to talk about like just how bad it is and just how like this is the nicest thing I could say about it. It is definitely bad in an entertaining way. It is not bad in the boring like, oh, this is just generic garbage way. Like, no. They go magnificently all out. It is nonsensically stupid. It just makes absolutely no sense. Like, and it really hammers home that they genuinely believe that being smart is like a magic power. So the conceit of the finale is that Sherlock has a secret sister. How does he not know about her? Don't think about it. Repressed memories, as it turns out. It's really stupid. Anyway, uh, so
He looks at
the
a
secret
family
sister.
portrait and goes, who's the woman in the dress? It's probably nothing.
I know. But yeah, it's repressed memories. Don't think about it. Anyway, so we learned that his secret sister is even
Secret
smarter than
sister.
him and Mycroft. So you know how Mycroft is traditionally smarter than Sherlock? Well, she's the smartest of all. She's described as being like, another Newton. But unlike them, she's evil. And also, and I swear, like, I really want to emphasize, I swear to God, this is real and explicit, right? Like,
Yes.
100%. She has magic powers, and her power is that she can control minds. That she is so smart that people just listen to her. And she has corrupted the entire prison. They're now under her mind control. And
Amazing.
she could just give them orders and they will listen. Uh, and how does she have this power? Well, apparently, it's just a smart people power. Uh, if you are sufficiently smart, you can control minds. That's the message of Sherlock. Uh, and once again, like, I cannot emphasize enough, all of this is real. It's real. It's in the episode. They go to the island because like Moriarty like sent a message that he was back even though his brains were on the fucking wall. Uh, and they go to the prison that she's kept, where they learn this was all a trap to lure them there, right? Like, cause she's they're 10 steps ahead of everyone. Well, she's 11 steps ahead of everyone. She's so far ahead, it's super ahead. And the prison is now under her control because again, she has mind control powers, right? Like, if you're alone with her, she'll just corrupt you. You can't be in the same room as her. It's very important. Anyway, and she puts them through like a series of Saw tests, like the movie Saw, right? Uh, of like Saw traps. And I will say that some of the individual scenes in isolation, like separated from the fact that this is one of the most retarded stories I have ever seen in my life, uh, like are actually pretty good. Like she forces Sherlock to make Molly, who's like the scientist girl who has a crush on him, to say that she's in love with him. Like this in a vacuum in a better episode could have been a good scene, but in the context of the episode, why is she doing this? There is actually no reason. Literally none. So any, anyway, the end of the episode, though, this is, again, now keep in mind that their sister is like a psychotic serial killer with an intellect so extreme it gives her magic powers. Well, you learn that the repressed memory involved the fact that she like looked up to her big brother Sherlock or something, or I don't remember who was the older one. It doesn't matter.
Anthony, you're
And they
going
had a
into too
dog.
much detail.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, they have a dog, and he's killed. And
It was a really smart dog, wasn't
she
it? Or was it a
no, its
stupid
name was
dog?
Redbeard, and
It's a
she
stupid name.
like yeah, I know. And the dog like it made her really sad because then Sherlock was really sad that she killed the dog, and it made him depressed. And then she's shipped off to the prison where she becomes like an evil genius in the prison, but she's really sad because she doesn't have her brother
Uh,
anymore. And the reason she's evil is that she's lonely. So I swear to God, this is the real ending. Sherlock gives her a hug, and it makes it all better.
so there's a meme which parodies it. It's like, you guys ostracized me all my life, and now I've come back to wreak revenge on the society that ostracized me. And then the hero goes, "Wow, we'll have to defeat this guy with the power of friendship. Everybody, let's beat him up together."
Yeah.
And then he's going, "This is just perpetuating the cycle that created me."
Oh yeah. Well, have you ever seen the meme where it's like the super friends are here, and it's like love, friendship, and then they have like the third guy, and he's just like has a completely blank look on his face, and he goes incredible violence, and then get to the last, I go and hope, and then the guy goes like, wow, super dorks, you've got a new member, and then they cut to the final scene, and they're all at a restaurant, and like incredible violence is covered in blood. And one guy goes, "Wow, guys, we've been doing amazing recently."
All right.
Um, Yeah, so anyway, the moral of the story is that I like the finale of Sherlock is so bad, like I actually need to keep clarifying that all of this is real and not subtext because it genuinely sounds like a shitpost. Like that Sherlock has a secret sister with mind control powers. She puts him and Mycroft and Watson through a series of like jaw traps for no reason at all. But then Sherlock learns that she's very sad because she didn't have her brother, and he gives her a hug, and that solves the problem. The end.
You know what I'm
Uh,
thinking? I've been thinking about this thought for years, and I think Martin Freeman's overrated.
no, that's the one thing I won't accept. He's so good in Sherlock. I love him in Sherlock.
He's
Uh,
overrated.
I think that Benedict. I don't know if I would say Benedict Cumberbatch is overrated. I mean, like, I wouldn't really blame the actors for the
Benedict
show. I
Cumberbatch
guess.
is overrated.
Nah,
He's
I wouldn't really
definitely
blame.
overrated.
To be honest, I just wouldn't really blame the actors for the
Oh my
show.
god.
You know what I mean? Like,
Bullshit.
it's not
They
their
accepted
fault.
the contract. They accepted
What
it.
was that?
They accepted the
I
contract.
I mean, I get it, and you're not wrong because there's definitely like a taking the ticket aspect of it too.
Yes.
Yeah, but like the flip side is like I think they do a good job in what they're asked to do, especially Martin Freeman. I actually think Martin Freeman does a great job. Uh, he is by far the best part of the show. It's not even close.
Actually,
Uh,
yeah, he was.
like to me, I think of Martin Freeman like, there's a lot of like quintessential Sherlock Holmes. Some are better than others. But I don't think that there's any Watson that really lives up to Martin Freeman's portrayal. I think he does a really terrific job in the role. But anyway, that's it. That's the end. Anything else, Ben?
I think I think people who have no concept of fate and the will of God and karma and luck have no business writing about it.
Yeah. Woo.
Thank you. Thank you.
Preach.
We'll be back next week. Maybe John C. Wright, maybe something else. Certainly something you guys can sink your teeth into. I want to thank you for sticking with us through the absence of the last 2 weeks. I was in England. I was unavailable and unable to have enough internet together to stream. And so, just thank you for coming by. See you next week.